Well, Scott, thank you again for joining us and giving some time for the Summit graduates.
Oh,
Um,
glad to do it. Always glad to speak to the graduates.
you're one of our favorites because you're very fatherly and very real, and just you really do give yourself to us when you come. And
There are two things I absolutely look forward to every year. Number one is Summit. Number two is my annual trip to the UK. And
awesome.
Summit is right there. It's something I look forward to, and it energizes me. So I love being able to talk to the students, the alums, the graduates.
Well,
You
thank you very
guys mean
much.
a lot.
Well, help us understand kind of where we are. It is
Yeah.
2024, January. Roe v. Wade has been overturned, but then the states have taken and
Yeah.
responded in multiple different ways, going more extreme of some of the most liberal abortion laws possible, and then others wanting to outlaw it outright and criminalize, women who get abortions. What's the state of the union in a sense when it
Well,
comes to abortion?
it's a tough time for pro-lifers in the wake of Roe v. Wade being overturned. That doesn't mean that it was bad to overturn Roe.
Right.
We needed to overturn it, but it did expose a fundamental weakness with the pro-life cause, and that is the culture does not agree with us, David, that it's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being in the womb. I think pro-lifers for decades thought the problem was the judges were against us, so we had to overturn Roe, and we had a marketing problem. We just weren't liked. If we could just be more cool and slick, we'd be all right. None of that is true. Our problem isn't marketing, our problem is worldview. A majority of Americans do not agree with us that it's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. And that's where all of us, you, me, graduates, we've all got to become pro-life apologists capable of making a case for what we believe because no one's going to do it for us. We have to do it. And the sad part is there aren't enough people like Summit grads and others who have had the training to know how to do that. We need a lot more people who know what the pro-life case is. And you're right about the realities. We are 0 for 8 every time abortion has been put to the public for a vote since Roe got overturned. We're 0 for 8. We've lost each time.
Mhm.
And we're going to lose a lot more. There's more states coming up. My prediction is we'll lose all of them. And the reason is because if you ask the public, should women have a right to an abortion? People think yes. In fact, for many people, it's the most sacred right that's out there, that somehow if they don't have a right to control, or excuse me, a right to kill their own offspring, they somehow have no rights at all. That's a sad reality of where we are, and that's a worldview challenge we have to address as Christians.
That's not encouraging.
No, it's bad news.
What do we do? What can we do? I mean, I think, were we just naive? Were we
Yes.
unaware of the state of the
Yeah,
culture?
because for decades you heard conservative pundits saying if we could just get the courts out of the way, there's a sleeping giant that holds our worldview. They're conservative at heart, they're pro life at heart, they believe in the principles of the American founding. We just need to get the courts out of the way, the activist courts. Well, we did that by getting rid of Roe v. Wade. But now we find out there isn't a sleeping giant, or actually there is one, but it doesn't agree with us. It's on the other side,
Yeah.
and it's being used against us. We have one where state legislatures have enacted pro-life laws. That's good. But the problem is when the public votes on it, and we've got 11 more states coming up that are going to vote on it, and my prediction is we'll probably lose the vast majority of those, if not all of them. And that has to do with the worldview problem we have, that the public doesn't agree with us. And I'm very troubled that the Republican Party, a lot of conservative pundits have no stomach to fight the left on abortion. They want to just find a way to find a happy medium. Well, let's just go ahead and settle for a 15-week ban and never push for anything more. Well, we can't do that. That's compromise.
Right.
Now, that's different than saying, okay, I don't have the votes to protect all unborn humans, but I do have an opportunity right now to protect 90% of them, so I'll vote for that and keep fighting for the other 10. But this is a move where many people on our side are trying to get us to settle. And I want to say to our graduates, it's one thing to work incrementally to limit evil and promote good. It's quite another to say you'll settle for setting aside an entire class of human beings to be killed and saying, we'll be fine settling for letting all children under 15 weeks be killed through abortion, and we won't contest it any further. We can never do that.
What language is being used to articulate this position of settling? You know, I've heard some people talk about one issue voting. You know, don't be a one issue voter. So like, don't be so passionate about abortion and pro-life issues that you forget about the immigrant and the other issues. And your being stubborn on this one issue is ruining everything. Are there phrases like that? Is there language that this is couched in to help us discern what is, and if you don't mind defining what do you mean by incremental versus just giving up?
Well, there's incremental means this. You don't have the votes to protect all unborn children, but you do have the votes, say, to protect some of them.
Right.
So you take an incremental step to protect as many as you can, given the votes you have available.
Yeah.
But you never settle for that step. You keep coming back for more.
Got it.
As our critics know we will.
Yeah.
And the danger is not that you work incrementally to save as many children as you can. The danger is settling for saying, hey, I'll never push beyond a 15-week ban, or I'll never say we should protect children conceived through rape. If that's your stopping point, a refusal to protect those children, then you're ethically in a bad way.
Yeah.
But if you don't have votes to protect all of them, so you protect as many as you can, that's fine. What concerns me as I look out now at the landscape, you're exactly right. There are people telling conservatives, don't be a single issue voter. Not all issues, though, carry equal moral weight. Let me give you an example. Suppose we had a governor somewhere or a presidential candidate who had an excellent health care plan, excellent immigration policy, excellent care for refugees, excellent family support systems. But he thought it ought to be okay for men to beat their wives, and he wanted it to be legal for men to beat their wives. Wouldn't that disqualify him, even though he had all these other good things going for him? All issues are not equal, and some issues disqualify you from public office. And I would say that anybody who thinks we ought to promote the intentional killing of innocent human beings is acting evil as a leader, whether they have other good policies or not. Their good deeds do not atone for their bad ones.
Yeah. This is not an issue we can agree to disagree on.
No.
We may take incremental steps, but we'll always be fighting.
What I would say, though, to our graduates is this. Don't let all this bad news cause you to just punt and say, I'm not going to be involved politically.
Right.
As Christians, we are not allowed to punt. The shedding of innocent blood in Scripture is a preeminent moral crisis. It's a particularly egregious sin. Mm-hmm. Proverbs 6 teaches that. Exodus 23 teaches that. Isaiah 1 teaches that. Isaiah 59 teaches that. I mean, I could go on and on.
Yeah.
But the reality is, in Scripture, those that promote the shedding of innocent blood are engaging in particularly egregious behavior. And we as God's people have to respond to that. In fact, in Proverbs 24, it's very clear God will not hold us guiltless if we sit these things out. We're told to rescue those being led to the slaughter, and that God will hold us responsible if we didn't speak up when we had the opportunity. Of course, we can't always guarantee a win. I mean, I think, for example, at the prophet Jeremiah, God tells him to stand in the city square and testify against child sacrifice. And then God gives him this nice piece of news. No one's going to listen to you. Yeah. But that did not relieve Jeremiah of his responsibility to testify to the truth. And that's what we've got to do in a post-Roe world.
Yeah. So what does that look like? I mean, this is almost a refresher because every time you come to Summit, that's what these students ask is, Scott, how do I do that where I am right now? Are there, now that the issue is not so much federal, but it's more state, are there different ways that these graduates can get involved?
Well, I would argue it is still federal in this regard. The federal courts have dismissed themselves from being the sole arbiter of abortion policy. Yeah. But Congress can pass a law one way or the other. Congress could pass a pro-life law that is national, that supersedes state law, or more likely, we stand in danger of Congress passing a pro-abortion law that would supersede the state laws of pro-life red states. So We have to be involved federally. Federally is not off the table at all. Some people think, oh, it's now only a states' rights issue. No, it's not, because Congress still can pass laws one way or the other. So if you got, for example, if in the next election we end up with a Democrat president, a Democrat House, and a Democrat Senate, we will have a pro-abortion national law imposed on the entire country, including those states that currently have pro-life laws on the books. So don't think we can sit the federal elections out. No, this is vital that we get involved, even though it's not fun, even though we think, I don't want to be so political. But that's not an excuse to avoid applying our biblical worldview in a way that can help save lives from destruction.
So there's kind of two parts to this, right? There's the one part we've been talking about as far as what's legal, what's legalized, and what we can do to try to advocate for laws that defend innocent human life as opposed to condemn innocent human life to the will of a parent who doesn't want them.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. What about the other side of it that I've heard John Stonestreet talk a lot about? Not just making it illegal, but making it unthinkable. What are the arguments out there that are making this such a viable and not egregious and offensive idea to the culture that they've bought in?
I think the two big ideas we struggle with the most is what Carl Trueman refers to as expressive self-individualism, this idea that the self is the ultimate reigning authority. But it goes beyond that, as Trueman points out. It's not only that the self has ultimate authority, but you must validate myself as being able to choose my own identity. And if you don't affirm my identity, you don't affirm my view of the world, you will be forced under law to do so. And you'll have punitive effects that come your way. This is very troubling to me. This goes beyond just saying my body, my choice. This is saying my identity is wrapped up in my right to express my bodily autonomy any way I want. And you even suggesting I can't do that is oppressive, and it should be punished by law. That's a new development.
Yeah.
Very scary. And we also face a new development from what we call standpoint epistemology. And this comes out of the whole worldview of wokeness.
Okay.
Standpoint epistemology says that truth is not objective. It's not known through corresponding to reality. In fact, to say so is oppressive. Rather, truth is determined solely, and I do mean solely, from the standpoint of the alleged oppressed victim. So, for example, you as a white male, me as a white male, we have no standpoint to weigh in on moral issues, whether it's abortion, gay marriage, transgender issues, economics, whatever it is. Any issue that has prevalence today, we don't have standpoint because we have no victim intersectionality, where a black female has 2 points of intersectionality. She's a female and she's black. Of course, we could ask, how do we know she's a female when nobody knows what a woman is anymore? But set that aside for a moment.
Right.
A gay lesbian woman has even more standpoint because she's got 3 oppression intersections: gay, being a woman, and being black. So she has more moral authority because of her standpoint than you do as a white male as an oppressor. You have none. She's got 3 points, so therefore her view is more true than anything you could ever say because she has standpoint. So no longer does truth correspond to reality, it corresponds to your standpoint. And that means we don't even have a standard for evaluating arguments the way we once did.
Yeah.
That's scary stuff.
It's kind of a form of really radical relativism.
It's a very postmodern world. It's postmodernism on steroids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually watched an interview or a sermon clip recently from an African-American pastor who was professing to be very pro-life and yet also pro-choice.
Yeah.
And it was the marriage of these ideas that I'm very pro-life, but basically at the end of the day, who am I to say you should have the right to choose? And what you choose is, of course, going to be best.
Yeah, so let's switch the issue on this guy. I'm very much against spousal abuse. I'm pro-marriage, but I think you should have the right. Who am I to say you can't beat your wife?
Right.
I mean, what a silly argument from a pastor.
What if you're happier in your marriage?
Yeah, and we've got a lot of these guys. We've got guys like Eugene Cho, and I could name other names. I'm an English major. I cite my sources as Rosaria Butterfield says. But the thing is, when somebody tells me they're pro-life, but they think it ought to be legal to intentionally kill innocent human beings, they are not pro-life. That is the pro-choice position.
Yeah.
It's okay if you personally want to oppose it, which raises the question, why do you oppose it in the first place? But set that aside for a moment. Imagine me saying I personally oppose spousal abuse, but what you do with your wife, that's your business. I'm not imposing my view. Or I personally oppose slavery, but if you want to own one, I'm not going to judge you. That's ridiculous. You're pro-life when you recognize that the shedding of innocent blood is a sin, and you work to protect unborn children in law. We don't win this fight until unborn children have full protection in law. I mean, imagine saying to a minority suffering discrimination, we're going to work to reduce racial acts of hatred, but we're not going to make it illegal to perform those acts. Would that be a pro-minority position? No, it would be a pro-abuse position.
Yeah. So how do you respond to the people who, and I hear this a good bit, and I know you have too, you're not really pro-life because you only care about the birth process. I mean, you're not even considering or fighting for the rest of their life and all the other injustices they face.
Yeah, the thing that really gets me about this one is it's not just our critics that say it, it's people on our side of the issue that are buying into this garbage, and it is garbage. And this view that we need to move from whole life or from pro-life to whole life will destroy our efforts to save unborn humans, and we have to resist it. It is a pro-life heresy is what I would call it. Every bit as dangerous as a doctrine that would deny the deity of Christ would be to Christianity. This is that dangerous to the pro-life movement. When somebody says to me, you're not pro-life because you don't take on all these other issues like immigration, like care for refugees, the poor, you're not helping disadvantaged kids find education, you're not donating more of your money to help tax, you're not favoring
loan forgiveness.
Yeah, all that other
goes on
stuff.
and
They
on and on.
pick every issue under the sun.
Yeah.
I don't accept the premise by saying, as a lot of pro-lifers do, oh, we do care about people before birth and after birth. Look at all the programs we do for women who face crisis pregnancies. I don't go there. I fight back against the premise. I look them right in the eye, and here's what I say. I need you to explain to me how it follows that because I oppose the intentional killing of an innocent human being, I have to fix everything wrong with society. I need you to explain that to me. And of course, they never have an answer.
Right.
And what people on our side are saying is, and they're just wrong about this. They say, well, we're never going to win people over till we show that we have a heart and we care about more than one issue. That's complete garbage, and here's how I know it. Every time I've said to a critic who says to me, oh, you're not really pro-life, you're just pro-birth, I'll look them in the eye and say, okay, I'm going to call your bluff. If I take on every issue you demand I take on, every issue under the sun, from homelessness to refugees to immigration to care for the poor, whatever you want to throw at me, will you join me then in being pro-life and opposing abortion? 100% of the time, and I do mean 100% of the time, the answer is no. Women have a fundamental right to an abortion. Okay, that's, in other words, it's all a big...
The rest of it's not the point.
Yeah, it's completely beside the point. So we need to fight back against this nonsense. I'm tempted to use even stronger language to describe it, but hey, we're talking to summit grads. We got to be holy. Yeah.
Okay, so back to what you talked about with Carl Truman and just the extreme kind of postmodernism. It's harder and harder to find common ground with people.
Yeah.
It's harder and harder to have these conversations. And I've noticed you keep coming back to the syllogism.
Yeah.
The premise, the other premise, and the conclusion based on the two.
Yeah. It's wrong to intentionally kill innocent human beings. Premise one. Premise two, abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being. Conclusion, therefore, abortion is wrong. That's our syllogism. Yeah.
Is that our most effective tactic given the assault? I mean, the assault is on reality, your perception of reality, language. They're fighting to control the language so that words don't mean what they used to. With the landscape changing so quickly, and some people just kind of being left dizzy, like deers in the headlights, like, where do I go from here? What is our best, most effective tactic? Is it?
Well, if I were to light a pipe and go really philosophical here
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
try to be like William F. Buckley,
yeah.
let me just, pontificate on that. But no, here's the thing. The syllogism is not sufficient to settle the argument, but it's necessary. If you don't spell out formally what it is you're arguing for,
Right.
people will change the subject on you.
Yeah.
So in addition to the syllogism, we add a scientific case for the pro-life view that supports the syllogism, a philosophic case that supports it. But then what we need to add as well, and we've done this at Summit for decades, we need to appeal to people's moral intuitions. We need to bypass the rhetorical, obstacles they put up. So that's why we show abortion imagery. If
Yeah.
you show the abortion imagery, it goes right to their moral intuitions. And this is nothing new. This dates back to even in the Civil War when
Yeah.
abolitionists began circulating pictures of African men beaten with scars running down their backs and children being lynched by white racists. Well, what this did is it inflamed public opinion in the North, and it woke people up to realize, wait a minute, this is more than just an academic discussion.
Yeah.
There's a real injustice here. So we're going to have to, in a postmodern era that thinks truth is either one standpoint or we can't get at it because we're trapped behind our own perceptions.
Yeah.
We're going to have to more and more make sure, not as a sufficient condition to win the debate, but as a necessary one, that we are getting the imagery out there that depicts abortion for what it really is.
And there's some fantastic ministries that do that. Justice for All is one I know some grads have been familiar with or introduced to, and there's a bunch of others. But how do we do that personally? It's one thing to join a group and do it on campus and
Right.
in a way like that, but
Well, you sit down with a friend, you give them that syllogism,
yeah,
you walk them through the scientific proof, and then you ask if they'd be willing to look at what abortion is. The groups that do this most effectively are groups like Created Equal. They do phenomenal work. They go out on campus. And then another group I just absolutely love is Protect Life Michigan. And these are young adults who have taken it on themselves to rally college students to the pro-life position. They start pro-life groups, they use the pictures, and I like them because there are pro-life groups that won't use the pictures, or they say silly things like, well, we'll only use them if we get prior consent from the students. Well, who up front wants to give consent to look at pictures? So what we do instead is we give notification, not consent. We always tell people what they're about to see. We don't force it on them by surprise, but we don't get their permission. If you had asked me in November of 1990, do I want to look at abortion pictures, I would have told you no. But it was those pictures that moved me from being attitudinally opposed to abortion to behaviorally opposed. You don't get Scott today without the fact that pictures were shown at an event I went to in November of 1990.
it reminds me of the guy on the street who's uh, giving all these specific, pretty rough things that people would be against. I saw a gentleman doing this right after October 7th, and he was on the street talking about Israel having done this and Israel having done, accusing Israel of doing all these terrible things, and people are just so upset. And he's like, "Oh wait, hold on, that was actually Hamas." And
Yeah.
it's just
He turned it on him.
it flipped it on him, and they were just wait.
Yeah.
The petition that he was asking them to sign, and it really caused them to stop it. They is a big stone in their shoe.
Yeah, and I've done this with people who say to me, well, you pro-life conservatives only care about kids before they're born. I said, that's really wrong, isn't it? Yeah, that's just awful. Did you know the Democrats actually were the people who don't care about kids once they're born? Because not one of them could bring themselves to vote for a bill that would protect children who survive abortions and are born alive. They voted not to even protect those kids. They're the ones that don't care about kids once they're born. And you can just turn it on them. And sometimes we've got to do that. It's a crazy time. I would say to the grads this. There is hope out there in that the other side has not been able to put our movement out of business. We're still here. And I am telling people, here are your three biggies. Read up on this issue and master it. I'm so convinced of it, I wrote a second edition of The Case for Life that's over twice as thick as the original one. And no, it's not thicker paper and larger type. It is smaller font and thinner paper. But the reason was I wanted to make sure in a post-Roe world that we are up to snuff intellectually.
Yeah.
So we need to master the pro-life position. But secondly, we need to continue to stay engaged politically. I know it seems discouraging. And here's what you do as a pro-lifer. Always vote to limit evil and promote the good insofar as you can, given the hand you've been dealt or the election cycle you're in. We don't get to sit it out just because we don't like some people. This next election, political moment here, it's going to be two flawed candidates, two men with bad character. They both have very bad character. And the question is there one, though, that has better policies than the other? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, you look in the Bible and God judges Jeroboam and his leadership over Israel, not because of Jeroboam's personal character, but because of the bad policies that he led the nation into idolatry. Mm-hmm. So I'm faced with a choice of, okay, bad character on both fronts. One of those candidates also has bad policies to go with his bad character, and that's going to harm the nation. And so I want to do the greatest good I can given the vote I have. That's my personal opinion. I'm not giving Summit's view here, just so you know. And you can edit this out if I've stepped over the line.
This is
but
good.
I think we need to continue pressing to do as much good as we can.
Yeah. So if the graduates were to look, where would you encourage them to look to be encouraged? Where are good things happening?
Good things are happening with pro-life groups that are willing to take the message to the public. We're losing when our side tries to hide and de-emphasize abortion. We lost in Ohio, we lost in Michigan, we lost in Kansas. I would even argue we lost in Kentucky because we tried to tie the abortion issue to other issues like, oh, this means if your child wants to transition as a transgender student, you're not going to have the ability to stop them. Well, the public saw right through that. They knew this was about abortion, and so they saw through this rhetoric. We need to be front and center. Here's what we believe. Here's why we believe it. And here's why it's wrong to believe the other way. And have the conviction to get our position out there and let the chips fall where they may. We're never going to win as long as we run away from our issue.
Yeah, it seems, I've heard people talk about, there's fatigue, there's abortion fatigue. I mean, people are just tired of it.
They've been saying that for 40 years.
And yet, that's Kamala Harris's main issue. She's been
That's all it is.
For a long, long time now.
It's the Democrats' only issue. Can we just be candid here?
Yeah.
We have a political party in this country, David, that is absolutely sworn to promote abortion wholesale. And that's the Democrat Party. Now, that doesn't mean the Republicans are guiltless because they often have no spine. They irritate me too. But we shouldn't deny the fact that the Democrat Party, in principle, is committed 100% to intentionally killing innocent human beings in the womb. Not only here, they want our tax dollars sent overseas to do it. Yeah. That is a preeminent moral crisis, and somebody telling me that's just a single issue thing doesn't know what they're talking about. They don't understand the preeminent moral evil that's involved here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, do you have any other kind of parting thoughts you want to share with the graduates on just...
I would say this to our graduates. Do not think your effectiveness is linked only to the platform you may have at the moment. There's this temptation of, hey, here's this guy over here. He's got 150 million views on his YouTube channel. Yeah. I don't have that kind of influence. Therefore, my life's kind of just insignificant. That is not true at all. I am in this fight today because I went to a presentation where there were only 8 people present. And it would have been very easy for the speaker to say, well, there's nobody here. I'm not going to bring my best game to the table. I'm not going to make my best case for the pro-life view. But that guy did his best, and it changed me from where I was sort of passively pro-life, to becoming radically involved in the issue. And we often underestimate our effectiveness because we think, I don't have the popular platform so many other people do. And my advice to you would be, you come loaded with the knowledge you need to defend a biblical worldview, and you let God worry about who's going to be impacted and who isn't. And a lot of these people out there with huge platforms, some of them are doing good work, but others of them seem very suspicious to me that they're more about their personal image, more about building a platform than they are really zeroing in on people and helping disciple them. And there's a lot you can do in your local church to help people understand this issue in a way. In fact, in Ohio, one of the things we learned in our defeat there on the pro-life side, almost no churches were engaged, and those that were engaged were not engaged at the level they needed to be. Well, that's something each of us can do something about in our own churches.
Yeah.
So don't think you have to have 1 billion viewers on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or X or Meta, whatever they call those things now.
Yeah.
The name seems to change daily. These platforms don't necessarily represent true influence. True influence is, what are you doing to disciple your kids? How are you helping them understand a biblical worldview? What are you doing to help your roommates think clearly on this? How about people in your Sunday school class, your young adult group? That's very powerful stuff when you're a resource for them to understand these issues. And, you know, there's a guy in our church who took it upon himself to make sure that every high school student that came through the youth group got exposed to pro-life and Christian worldview apologetics. That guy's in his 60s, and yet he impacted my son at the time, who was 14 and 15, and my son would come home from Sunday school and go, yeah, the old guy spoke again today, and he's the only one who makes sense. Now, this guy is not an eloquent, I'm into storytelling now, I'm sorry, but he wasn't what you would call this dynamic speaker. Summit probably would never put him on the speaking docket, but he was very smart. He had read a lot of stuff, and he hurt for kids that were walking away from the faith because they had never been exposed to what a biblical worldview looked like. So this guy went to the youth pastor and said, listen, let me have all the junior and senior young men on Sunday mornings, and I will put them through a year-long training on how to defend their faith. And that guy initiated that. Again, not a spellbinding orator.
Yeah.
He wasn't funny and entertaining. In fact, he's kind of old school and boring. But it absolutely put a biblical worldview in these kids' heads. And that guy made a difference. Yeah. In fact, he might have made a bigger difference than the guy that's got 100,000 viewers, but he's really just spreading a lot of fluff and self-promotion.
I really appreciate you coming back to that. This is one of the things you encouraged the graduates with this past summer when we talked.
Yeah, when you asked me about the meaning of life, thank you, my friend. But on no notice, that was great.
But it's so good because we live in a culture where we measure ourselves by others, and especially in their social media influence, and even just the term influencer.
I hate that term influencer, thought leader. These are just, I hate those terms.
It's ambition gone wild, right? Because each of us have we're limited. We're human.
We are.
We can only be one place at one time, and too many times we're so distracted we miss the opportunity with our family and our friends and our neighbors and our neighborhood.
That's right in front of us.
Classmates to really have true influence.
Let's talk about who we really are. We are not pop stars on Facebook or X or Instagram or TikTok. What we really are is we are sinful human beings wrestling with besetting sins, wrestling with our own depression, our own darkness that all of us have to deal with. We are Christians trying to fight the good fight, often failing more than we win. That's who we really are, and yet somehow God still gives us opportunity to influence for His kingdom. And that's a task we should pick up with buoyancy and hope. I actually feel good that God, for whatever reason, despite my fumbles and all my mess, has found fit to have me at this time in world history that seems dark, and that He has allowed me to have a voice in this dark time. And I kind of like that. I mean, think about who we make movies about. Churchill, Joshua Chamberlain, George Washington. I mean, the list goes on and on. Wellington at Waterloo. We make movies about people who faced enormous odds and were in very dark times, but they did their duty despite everything else that was going on around them. And
Schindler's List.
Schindler's List. And I would say to our Summit grads, listen, this is not about you achieving perfection in this life. I have news for you. You're not going to. You're not either, by the way,
Right.
and neither am I. But we have the confidence that we've been declared righteous because Jesus stands in our place condemned, and God judges us on his merits, not ours. Thank God. So we can go to bed every night knowing we have the final verdict of history. We're not going to be condemned. We are accepted into the beloved, not because of anything we've done, but because of what Christ has done for us. And that ought to give us confidence to do our duty in a dark age now, knowing we have the verdict of the final judgment.
Yeah. Well, and to give ourselves the grace that God is extending to us in Christ.
Absolutely.
Too many times, it's perfection rather than repentance, right?
Well,
Repentance is the gift of grace we all should celebrate.
Perfection kills so many good things. You know, the old saying, the perfect is the enemy of the good, is true in more ways than we like to know. I mean, I'm just going to speculate here. Imagine a housewife who has worked all day to try to care for a couple of toddlers. And then, you know, that night they're supposed to go out and do something at church. And she looks at her house that's just trashed, as a way toddlers will do that to you, and she's worn out and doesn't have a lot left in the tank, and yet feels she's somehow not doing her job because she's not pulling more weight at church or not doing this great exploit, and she's behind on project. Or the guy that works, the guy that goes out and provides for his family, and he busts his rear end day in and day out to make sure the kids have food and clothes, and there's not a lot of wiggle room in the budget, and he's feeling like, man, when will I ever have this breakthrough where I can really have an impact?
Yeah.
And you know what? Having an impact really isn't on you and I. Our job is to do what we can to fulfill God's purpose now. Be that good father, be that good wife to the best of your abilities. And guess what? You're never going to do it perfectly. The house is going to smell at times. There's going to be people who pop in when you're not expecting it, and there's crumbs on the kitchen sink, and the dog is running through the house. And I mean, we've all had those moments, you know. It's like, oh man, why did they pick now to show up? My life looks so messy. Well, that's kind of the way life is, isn't it? So
real life.
Real life. And Summit grads, it's okay to be real. Yeah. I have fellowship with you not because we both have clean houses or spotless cars, but because we've both been redeemed. We're both redeemed sinners. And that's who's going to populate heaven, not a bunch of perfect people who have it together. You don't come to Summit to get your life together. You come to Summit to begin learning how to think biblically. And that's a lifelong task. You don't end it. You don't say to yourself, boy, it's been 3 years since I've been to Summit and I don't have it all together. What's wrong with me? Guess what? This is going to be a lifelong thing. Your justification is instantaneous, but your sanctification, that's going to go on until you are food for worms. So that's the reality. We're going to be pushing up daisies before we get this perfection game right.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And thanks for that encouragement there at the end especially.
No, I love the Summit grads. I love the fact that they donated time to come. And listen, all of you, let God just unfold his plan for you. It's not on you to figure it all out. Let him do it. He is sovereign. He will do it.
Amen. We look forward to hearing from you again. Thanks for giving your time.
You're welcome. Glad to do it.
Thank you.